Sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students, scholars, teachers, trainers, professionals, official listener learners, I welcome all respected doctors and directors. I welcome Honorable Minister Managers. I welcome Honorable Advocates, retired and district advisors. I welcome the Most Honorable President Prime Minister Modi. I Dr. Rakesh from USA, heartily cordially welcome. It is really nice time, nice place, nice section that we are describing, explaining, defining our holy Indian spiritual, cultural, social, educational, constitutional identities in the form of unity in diversity. महिलाओं की आजादी पर सुनियोजित हमला अश्विनी वैष्णव से इसके लिए कर्मचारियों का डीए और डीआर 2% बढ़ाया गया देश विदेश में नारी अधिकार AMGSY 3 को मार्च 2026 12,980 करोड़ रुपए से भारत समुद्री बीमा पूल के गठन अश्विनी वैष्णव से 2 रेल परियोजनाओं को दी गई मंजूरी गाजियाबाद से सीतापुर के बीच लाइन 3 और लाइन 4 को मंजूरी राष्ट्रमंच पर सवाल TCS नासिक कैंपस कांड में अब तक क्या-क्या खुलासे NDA 3.0 of 53 railway this highway part कुल 24 लाख करोड़ रुपए से अधिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को मिल चुकी है मंजूरी कॉर्पोरेट जिहाद से देश की सुरक्षा पर भी खतरा है कि रात बेंगलुरु वर्सेस दिल्ली हैदराबाद बनाम चेन्नई मंच प्रधानमंत्री आज 8:30 बजे राष्ट्र को संबोधित करेंगे संसद की कार्यवाही अनिश्चित काल के लिए स्थगित ओम बिरला से लोकसभा में कार्य उत्पादकता 93% रही ओम बिरला से इस दौरान कुल 9 बिल पास किए गए एनडीए गठबंधन देश भर में करेगा विरोध प्रदर्शन स्टॉक मार्केट्स up as US-Iran tension ease. Falling oil, fresh foreign fund inflows, a booster. US calls worry of Trump's fresh tariff plan under 301. Say new duties will hurt their competitiveness. Increase costs for American consumers. Corporate Affairs Ministry looks to rationalize filing framework. Pari Renewable final year 26 PAT jumps 109% from Ahmedabad. Starmer rejects calls to resign over Mandelson appointment from London. China steps up Iran diplomacy while seeking smooth summit with Trump. Beijing's modulated approach has protected its back channel leverage from Beijing or Hong Kong. Chatbots at the ballot box. High stakes of AI misinformation in Brazil. Netflix chairman Hastings to step down from board from New York. Women quota amendment bill defeated in Lok Sabha. Fails to cross 2 by 3rd majority from New Delhi. Visually impaired kids scores 96.8% after laptop battle. Center eases sweet norms for Punjab. India China hold first SCO bilateral talks for suicide in 2 months at NIT Kurukshetra from Chandigarh. Iran says the Strait of Hormuz open after Lebanon ceasefire. Trump expects Iran pact soon. Supreme Court mandates CCTVs to tackle sand mining from New Delhi. PD lands Arora's second half Punjab leader in 3 days. CM tries vendetta from Jalandhar or Chandigarh. Built on sacrifice, a new house for family of Pahalgam's braveheart from Anantnag. Procurement picks cash as center relaxes norms state to pay for spoilage during storage from Chandigarh or Bathinda. Farmers waiting 10 days to sell wheat, says Sukhbir from Bathinda. Three shooters linked to fugitive gangster Mahi held in Patiala from Patiala. JJP leader Barwala gets default bail in sex discrimination case from Hisar. 6 months after death, Rewari youth's body arrives from Russia from Rewari. BJP constitutes manifesto committee for civic polls. Fuller to look after 18 departments from Chandigarh. 93K to appear for HCS preliminaries from Chandigarh. BDPO held for taking bribe from jail. Visually impaired students scores 96% in class 10th exam fought for Nord to write exam on laptop from Hisar. Bank scam says CBI takes custody of 6 accused. Digvijay faces FIR over JGUST violence. 6 arrested from Hisar. The AMK to distribute free ration among migrants from April 18 from Jammu. PU OK's 3-year degree option for 4-year UP students from Chandigarh. Democracy being strangled. Man Salam the center on idiots. BJP politics of intimidation can't scare US from Chandigarh. Something fishy BJP on up reaction. Another youth loses life to drugs in Kapurthala. Madhya Pradesh government hikes MSP for key crops. Clear 1500 government posts. Family unchanged 75-year-old woman after panel notice from Amritsar. Sharma's wife passport row. Supreme Court refuses to protect Pawan Kheda from New Delhi. India and China hold their first SCO bilateral talks from New Delhi. Opponents against women's quota hike in Supreme Court ST seats from New Delhi. Dual citizenship. Dual citizenship law. High Court orders FIR against Rahul from Lucknow. IT department rents premises linked to TMC candidate from Kolkata. AIA DMK chief Palaniswamy was drug-free Tamil Nadu if voted to power, says DMK failed to fulfill even quarter of its poll promises. Idol worship is central to Hinduism. Sabrimala priest says. The Thantri said women in Kerala realize the significance of the custom associated with Sabrimala temple and have been cooperating with the system wholeheartedly. Each deity has peculiar rituals. Thantri tells Supreme Court from New Delhi. Jumbo hell brings traffic to a standstill from Raipur. Nine family killed in fire after car collides with bus in Karnataka from Karnataka. No dearth of money now, but we miss our bill, says father. Will cooperate with agency, says Punjab Minister on X. LPG bookings as toward normal as summer season eases the demand from New Delhi. Authorities dragging feet Supreme Court on dealing with mining mafias. Ordered installation of CCTVs in National Chambal Gharial Sanctuary from New Delhi. The path to inner ends for outer success. Gita is the most powerful and comprehensive guide on how an ordinary mortal can rise above petty personal distractions to become the extraordinary immortal spirit. Gita translates deep philosophy into a powerful technique for everyday living. It has inspired seekers worldwide for centuries and has been translated into almost every major language. Yet, despite its popularity, its true depth often remains unexplored. The setting of Gita is the battlefield of Kurukshetra, representing the inner battlefield we all experience. Moments of doubt, anxiety, conflict, and indecision. Though Gita was delivered thousands of years ago, its relevance is timeless. Its principles apply to every individual, regardless of age, profession, or geography. It speaks directly to the challenges of modern life. Gita is a dialogue Krishna and between Krishna the Guru and Arjuna, his dear friend and leader of the Pandavas, on the brink of great war. Arjun is overwhelmed, faced with the prospect of fighting his own relatives, teachers, and loved ones. He loses clarity and courage. He drops his bow, unable to act. At that critical moment, Krishna transforms his thinking through a masterful blend of psychology and philosophy. Krishna helps Arjuna. Krishna helps Arjuna rise above emotional turmoil, rediscover his purpose, and take decisive action. This conversation reflects the struggles we face every day, the tension between right and wrong, long term purpose and short term comfort, clarity and confusion. Each of us faces battles within between our higher aspiration and lower impulses, between discipline and destruction, between intellect and the mind. However, amid these challenges, we need to stand between the two opposing forces and dive deep into our inner being, find our purpose, mission, and inner calling. Then we will get the answers and gain the strength to overcome adversity. All problems are self created, hence, the solution must also lie within. As long as we look outward, the situation appears insurmountable. Look within, and problems vanish. Krishna, the Jagat Guru or universal mentor, is depicted as an expert flute player. The flute is a simple hollow instrument with seven apertures. Krishna, Krishna had mastered the art of creating enchanting music from it. The flute represents our personality, five senses, mind, and intellect. Not having learned and mastered the teaching technique of living, we bring out discordant notes. When we empty ourselves of negativity, desire, and ego, captivating music emerges from our personality. The goal of all beings is happiness, but we do not know where it lies or how to obtain it. We are all chasing a mirage when oasis of bliss lies within. The Gita spells out the formula for happiness and prescribes a pathway to it. Service, love, and knowledge. Act with the spirit of giving. Expand your circle of love and understand that everything in the world is transient. The message of Gita is transformative. You are far more powerful than you believe. You are not merely a limited, stressed individual trying to cope with life. You are the very source of energy that sustains your body, drives your thoughts, and fuels your aspirations. The same intelligence that governs the universe operates within you. No country for Chigul lectors are psychopaths real? Maybe, but evidence is scarce. Janitor walks into a bar and orders water. Our relationships, even with ourselves, shift, shift when the color of alcohol is gone. Vulnerability isn't outsourced to fifth glass of wine. Joy becomes less about the shared high, more about shared presence. Here is something surprising. The word is drinking less alcohol. Sure, it's still strictly regularized. It's still strictly regulated. There are age limits, massive taxes, tough licensing, restrictions on sales and advertising, and some places even have total prohibition. All this suggest that alcohol is one of those vices that is left unchecked. Humans would go crazy over, and yet global trends are clear. Sales are dropping. People don't want to drink, not as much as they used to. In US, Gallup polling indicates that these days only 54% of Americans drink at all. In 90-year low, total beverage alcohol volumes are down across the top 20 markets. Even in wine and beer loving Europe, market research has found that a whopping 71% of consumers are drinking less or cutting out alcohol altogether. This isn't just a blip, it's a pattern across generational lines and global markets. India, however, is seeing alcohol sales volumes grow around 7% annually. But a lot of this is due to our low base compared to West per capita consumption of close to 8 to 9 liters per year. India only consumes around 3 liters. There is some catching up happening. Plus, we have a large young population, which means a lot of people entering drinking age every year. What's likely is that eventually alcohol sales will peak and start seeing declining in India as well. There are early signs of this in certain urban segments. In big cities, there are pockets where beer and traditional liquor consumption is flattening or dipping among younger gender drinkers. Why is world drinking less? People today are more health conscious than ever. Fewer cigarettes, more yoga, more green juice mean less booze. There is growing preference for wellness over hangovers. We are now a constant surveillance society. One of the effects of drinking and the common reason why people do it is that it helps people open up and let go. It is the normal filters of conversation and behavior, which our brain applies when sober. After a few drinks, you can dance like an idiot on restaurant tables or speak nonsense, basically, do various things you never would if you are not under the influence. And the fact is, we no longer live in a narco society. There is a video camera in every pocket. You can be recorded and shared. Making a fool of yourself, bad dates to bar, browse to awful, dancing to fucking to passing out. All part of one's personal alcohol life can bring tremendous shame if shared with the world. You could also lose your job, get cancelled, or worse. The conclusion, particularly among us Gen Z, is don't drink. Our special life has shifted online, and phone to phone socializing doesn't require a beer in your hand. The science on alcohol damage has gotten super scary with time. Studies have now made it clear that alcohol is bad for us, even in moderation, and that message really resonates with the younger cohort. The GLP-1 effect is also real. Nearly half of people taking drugs like Ozempic report cutting back in alcohol, and most of them continue to drink less even after getting off the medicine. Basically, it's a cocktail of health, psychology, convenience, and medication that's quietly reshaping India's drinking culture, where drinking was a social glue. Its absence may mean less socialization, which is nasty. But the big and these are very big positives are one, better health outcomes, less liver disease, fewer alcohol related deaths, lower crime and accidents related to intoxication, and rise of healthy alternatives like non-alcoholic beverages and sober events. All this is also impacting modern relationships. Choosing not to drink reshape assumptions about how to have fun together. First dates hit differently when alcohol cannot mask incompatibility without liquid courage. We say things and show vulnerability differently without nights of drinking, which can escalate into fighting. New communication patterns emerge. The party couple transitioning to genuine intimacy can be a powerful thing. For couples juggling careers, side hustles, and the constant hum of digital life, sobriety can also feel like an efficiency upgrade. No hangovers, fewer wasted weekends. More intentional time together? Yes. Going dry can feel like a productivity hack for love. More importantly, without alcohol, partners are left to confront each other and themselves more directly. Vulnerability isn't outsourced to a fifth glass of wine. Joy becomes less about the shared high and more about shared presence. Without the burner, what remains is the reality of the relationship. Real social life, meaningful connection, laughter and presence, those are the things worth living for. So, here is to sipping less alcohol but savoring more of life. Cheers. 400 shared job cities. India's cuisines are too diverse to be boxed in. Dose of vitamin, government with a sense of humor get over what? Still, supreme leader, European leaders may be uncomfortable with Trump's Iran war, but wouldn't dare criticize him for US remains the guarantor of Western security. But European publics are increasingly losing patience with this hypocrisy, punishing those seen as close to Trump. The spectator election, the spectacular election defeat of Hungary's longtime strongman Viktor Orban is just the latest in a clutch of ballots and shows European publics increasing disenchantment with the Trump-style gospel of militant Christian nationalism, and yet the establishment, European governments, and EU itself is still not at the point of abandoning its mad, uncrowned king. There are few voices, as seen as French Senator Malloret, who quoted a Turkish proverb to underline the West's emperor has no claws moment. Will cooperate with agency, says Punjab Minister on X. No dearth of money now, but we miss Adil, says father. LPG bookings as were normal and summer season eases demand from New Delhi. Authorities dragging feet. Supreme Court on dealing with mining mafias. Orders installation of CCTVs in National Temple Bhalial Sanctuary from New Delhi. The Supreme Court Friday said the statutory framework is well armed to deal with mining mafias, but apparently the administrative authorities are dragging their feet for reasons which are not difficult to discern. Delhi Court seeks ED response on Jacqueline split return approved. EWS can't seek AS ready for enhanced attempts, High Court says from New Delhi. Judgment Day for Man City and Arsenal from Manchester. Title chasing Manchester City face leaders Arsenal in a seismic showdown at the top of the Premier League on Sunday. Troubled Chelsea desperately need a win against Manchester United in the race for Champions League qualification, while Liverpool are also in search of a moral boost in Merseyside derby. Wigan Forest set up all English semi-finals clash from Paris. RCB eye victory against inconsistent capital from Bangalore. RR manager fined for phones used in dugout from Mumbai. Canada's T20 WC match versus New Zealand under ICC ACU scrutiny report says from New Delhi. Mental reset fuels Arshdeep's return to form from Mumbai. Balanced SRH face resurgent CSK from Hyderabad. MI are in a free fall and coach Jayawardene knows it from Mumbai. Need to take tough calls. MI captain Pandya hints at changes following for successive defeat from Mumbai. Panchayats. The Panchayats Part 9. Its definition in this part, unless the context otherwise requires, district means a district in a state. Gram Sabha means a body consisting of persons registered in the electoral rolls relating to a village comprised within the area of panchayats at the village level. Intermediate level means a level between the village and district level specified by the governor of a state by public notification to be the intermediate level for the purposes of this part. Panchayat means an institution by whatever name called of self-government constituted under Article 243B for the rural areas. Panchayat area means the territorial area for a panchayat. Population means the population as ascertained at the last proceeding census of which the relevant figures have been published. Village means a village specified by the government, by the governor, by public notification to be a village for the purposes of this part and includes a group of villages so specified. Gram Sabha. A Gram Sabha may exercise such powers and perform such functions at the village level as the legislature of a state may by law provide. Constitution of Panchayats. There shall be constituted in every state panchayat at the village, intermediate and district levels in accordance with the provisions of this part, notwithstanding anything in clause panchayats at the intermediate level may not be constituted in a state having a population not exceeding 20 lakhs. Composition of panchayats. Subject to the provisions of this part, the legislature of a state may, by law, make provisions with respect of the composition of panchayats, provided that the ratio between the population of the territorial area of the panchayat at any level and the number of seats in such panchayat to be filled by election shall, so far as practicable, be the same throughout the state. All the seats in a panchayat shall be filled by persons chosen by direct election from territorial constituencies in the panchayat area, and for this purpose each panchayat area shall be divided into territorial constituencies in such manner that the ratio between the population of each constituency and the number of seats allotted to it shall, so far as practicable, be the same throughout the panchayat area. The legislature of a state may, by law, provide for the representation of the chairperson of the panchayats at the village level, in the panchayats at the intermediate level, or in case of a state not having panchayats at the intermediate level, in the panchayats at the district level, of the chairpersons of the panchayats at the intermediate level, in the panchayats at the district level, of the members of the House of the People and members of the Legislative Assembly of the state representing constituencies, which comprise wholly or partly a panchayat area at a level other than the village level in such panchayats, of the members of the Council of States and the members of the Legislative Council of the state where they are registered as electors within. A panchayat area at the intermediate level. In panchayat at the intermediate level, a panchayat area at the district level, in panchayat at the district level, the chairperson of a panchayat and other members of a panchayat, whether or not chosen by direct election from territorial constituencies in panchayats, are, shall have the right to vote in the meetings of the panchayats. The chairperson of a panchayat at the village level shall be elected in such manner as the legislature of a state may, by law, provide, and a panchayat at the intermediate level or district level shall be elected by and from among us the elected members thereof. Reservation of seats. Seats shall be reserved for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes in every panchayat, and the number of seats so reserved shall be as nearly as may be the same proportion to the total number of seats to be filled by direct election in that panchayat, as the population of the scheduled caste in that panchayat area or of the scheduled tribes in that panchayat area bears the total population of that area, and such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a panchayat. Not less than one third of the total number of seats reserved under clause shall be reserved for women belonging to the scheduled caste, or as the case may be, the scheduled tribes. Not less than one third, including the number of seats reserved for women belonging to the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, of the total number of seats to be filled by direct election in every panchayat shall be resolved shall be reserved for women, and such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a panchayat. The offices of the chairpersons in the panchayats at the village or any other level shall be reserved for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and women in such manner as the legislature of a state may, by law, provide. Provided that the number of offices of chairpersons reserved for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes in the panchayats at each level in any state shall bear as nearly as may be the same proportion to the total number of such offices in the panchayats at each level as the population of the scheduled caste in the state or of the scheduled tribes in the state bears to the total population of the state. Provided further that not less than one third of the total number of offices of chairperson in the panchayats at each level shall be reserved for women. Provided also that the number of offices reserved under this clause shall be allotted by rotation to different panchayats at each level. The reservation of seats under clause 1 and 2 and the reservation of offices of chairperson other than the reservation for women under clause 4 shall cease to have effect on the expiration of the period specified in Article 334. Nothing in this part shall prevent the legislature of the state from making any provision for reserving of seats in any panchayat or offices of chairperson in the panchayats at any level in favor of backward class of citizens. Duration of panchayats, etc. Every panchayat, unless sooner dissolved under any law for the time being in force, shall continue for 5 years from the date appointed for its first meeting and no longer. No amendment of any law for the time being in force shall have the effect of causing dissolution of a panchayat at any level which is functioning immediately before such amendment till the expiration of its duration specified in clause 1. An election to constitute a panchayat shall be completed before the expiry of its duration specified in clause 1, before the expiration of a period of 6 months from the date of its dissolution, provided that where the remainder of the period for which the dissolved panchayat would have continued is less than 6 months, it shall not be necessary to hold any election under this clause for constituting a panchayat for such period. A panchayat constituted upon the dissolution of a panchayat before the expiration of its duration shall continue only for the remainder of the period for which the dissolved panchayat would have continued under clause 1 had it not been so dissolved. Disqualification for membership. Disqualification for membership. A person shall be disqualified for being chosen as and for being a member of a panchayat if he is so disqualified by or under any law for the time being in force for the purposes of elections to the legislation of the state concerned, provided that no person shall be disqualified on the ground that he is less than 25 years of age. If he has attained the age of 21 years, if he is so disqualified by or under any law made by the legislature of the state, if any question arises as to whether a member of a panchayat has become subject to any of the disqualification mentioned in the clause 1, the question shall be referred for the decision of such authority and in such manner as the legislature of a state may by law provide powers, authority and responsibilities of panchayats. Subject to the provisions of this constitution, the legislature of a state may, by law, endow the panchayats with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as institutions of self-government, and such law may contain provisions for the devolution of powers and responsibilities upon panchayats at the appropriate level, subject to such conditions as may be specified therein with respect to the preparation of plans for economic development and social justice. The implementation of schemes for economic development and social justice as may be entrusted to them, including those in relation to the matters listed in the 11th schedule, powers to impose taxes by and funds of the panchayats. The legislation of a state may, by law, authorize a panchayat to levy, collect and appropriate such taxes, duties, tolls and fees in accordance with such procedure and subject to such limits. Assign to a panchayat such taxes, duties, tolls and fees levied and collected by the state government for such purposes and subject to such conditions and limits, provided for making such grants in aid to the panchayats from the consolidated fund of the state, and provide for constitution of such fund for crediting all monies received respectively by or on behalf of the panchayats, and also for the withdrawal of such monies therefrom as may be specified in the law. Constitution of Finance, Commission to review financial position. The governor of a state shall, as soon as may be within 1 year from the commencement of the Constitution, 73rd Amendment Act 1992, and thereafter at the expiration of every 5th year, constitute a finance commission to review the financial position of the panchayats and to make recommendations to the governor as to the principles which should govern the distribution between the state and the panchayats of the net proceeds of the taxes, duties, tolls and fees leviable by the state, which may be divided between them under this part, and the allocation between the panchayats at all levels of their respective shares of such proceeds. The determination of the taxes, duties, tolls and fees which may be assigned or to or appropriated by the panchayats. The grants in aid to the panchayats from the consolidated fund of the state, the measures needed to improve the financial position of the panchayats, any other matter referred to the finance commission by the governor in the interest of sound finance of the panchayats. The legislature of a state may, by law, provide for the composition of the commission, the qualification which shall be requisite for appointment as members thereof, and the manner in which they shall be selected. The commission shall determine their procedure and shall have such powers in the performance of their functions as the legislature of the state may, by law, confer on them. The government shall cause every recommendation made by the Commission under this article, together with an explanatory memorandum as to the action taken thereon, to the laid before the legislature of the state. Audit of accounts of panchayats. The legislature of a state may, by law, make provisions with respect to the maintenance of accounts by the panchayats and the auditing of such accounts. Elections to the panchayats. The superintendent's direction and control of the preparation of electoral rolls for and the conduct of all elections to the panchayats shall be vested in a state election commission, consisting of a state election commissioner to be appointed by the governor, subject to the provisions of any law made by the legislature of a state, the conditions of service and tenure of office of the state election commissioner shall be such as the governor may be ruled determined, provided that the state election commissioner shall not be removed from his office except in like manner and on the like grounds as a judge of a high court, and the conditions of service of the state election commissioner shall not be varied to his disadvantage after his appointment. The governor of the state shall, when so requested by the state election commission, make available to the state election commission such staff as may be necessary for the discharge of the functions conferred on the State Election Commission by Clause 1, subject to the provisions of the Constitution. The legislature of a state may, by law, make provisions with respect to all matters relating to or in connection with elections to the panchayats. Application to union territories. The provisions of this part shall apply to the union territories and shall, in their application to a union territory, have effect as if the references to the governor of a state were references to the administrator of the union territories appointed under Article 239 and references to the legislature or the legislative assembly of a state were references in relation to a union territory having a legislative assembly to that legislative assembly, provided that the President may, by public notification, direct that the provisions of this part shall apply to any union territory or part thereof subject to such exceptions and modifications as he may specify in the notification. Part not to apply to certain areas. Nothing in this part shall apply to the scheduled areas referred to in clause 1 and the tribal areas referred to in clause 2 of the article 244. Nothing in this part shall apply to the states of Nagaland, Meghalaya and Mizoram. The hill areas in the state of Manipur for which district councils exist under any law for the time being in force. Nothing in this part relating to panchayats at the district level shall apply to the hill areas of the district of Darjeeling in the state of West Bengal, for which Darjeeling Gorkha Hill Council exists under any law for the time being in force, shall be construed to affect the functions and powers of the Darjeeling Gorkha Hill Council constituted under such law. Nothing in Article 243D relating to reservation of seats for the scheduled caste shall apply to the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, the legislature of a state referred to in some clause of clause may by law extend this part to that state except the areas, if any, referred to in clause 1, if the legislative assembly of the state passes a resolution to that effect by the majority of the total membership of that house and by a majority of not less than two-thirds of the members of the house present and voting, Parliament may by law extend the provisions of this part to the scheduled areas and the tribal areas referred to in clause subject to such exceptions and modification as may be specified in such law, and no such law shall be deemed to be an amendment of this constitution for the purposes of Article 368. Continuance of existing laws and panchayats. notwithstanding anything in this part, any provision of any law relating to panchayats in force in a state immediately before the commencement of the Constitution, 73rd Amendment Act 1992, which is inconsistent with the provisions of this chart, shall continue to be in force until amended or repealed by the competent legislature or other competent authority, or until the expiration of 1 year from such commencement, whichever is earlier, provided that all the panchayats existing immediately before such commencement shall continue till the expiration of their duration, unless sooner resolved by a resolution passed to that effect by the legislative assembly of the state, or in the case of a state having a legislative council, by each house of the legislature of that state, bar to interference by courts in electoral matters, notwithstanding anything in this constitution. The validity of any law relating to the delimitation of constituencies or the allotment of seats to such constituencies made or purporting to be made under Article 243K shall not be called in question in any court. No election to any panchayat shall be called in question except by an election petition presented to such authority and in such manner as is provided for by or under any law made by the legislature of a state. Part 9A, the municipalities. In its definition in this part, unless the context otherwise requires. Committee means a committee constituted under Article 243S. District means a district in a state. Metropolitan area means an area having a population of 10 lakhs or more, comprised in one or more districts and consisting of two or more municipalities or panchayats or other contiguous areas specified by the governor by public notification to be metropolitan area for the purposes of this part. Municipal area means the territorial area of a municipality as notified by the governor. Municipality means an institution of self-government constituted under Article 243Q. Panchayat means a panchayat constituted under Article 243B. Population means the population as ascertained at the last proceeding census of which the relevant figures have been replaced. Constitution of municipality. There shall be constituted in every state. In other panchayats, by whatever name called for a transitional area, that is to say, an area in transition from a rural area to an urban area, a municipal council for a smaller urban area, and a municipal corporation for a larger urban area, in accordance with the provisions of this part, provided that municipality under this clause may not be constituted in such urban area or part thereof as the governor may, having regarded to the size of the area and the municipal services being provided or proposed to be provided by an industrial establishment in that area, and such other factor as may be deemed fit by public notification specified to be an industrial township. In this article, a transitional area, a smaller urban area, or a larger urban area means such area as the governor may, having regard to the population of the area, the density of the population therein, the revenue generated for local administration, the percentage of employment in non-agricultural activities, the economic importance, or such other factors as we may deem fit specified by public notification for the purposes of this part. Composition of municipality, save as provided in clause. All the seats in municipality shall be filled by persons chosen by direct election from the territorial constituencies in the municipal area, and for this purpose each municipal area shall be divided into territorial constituencies to be known as wards. The legislature of a state may by law provide for the representation in a municipality of person having special knowledge or experience in municipal administration, the members of the House of the People and the members of the Legislative Assembly of the state representing constituencies which comprise wholly or partly the municipal area. The members of the Council of States and the members of the Legislative Council of the state registered as electors within the municipal area. The chairpersons of the committee constituted under clause 5 of Article 2 for 3s, provided that the persons referred to in paragraph 1 shall not be have the right to vote in the meetings of the municipality. The manner of election of the chairperson of a municipality, constitution and composition of wards, committees, etc. There shall be constituted wards, committees, consisting of one or more wards within the territorial area of a municipality having a population of 3 lakhs or more. The legislature of a state may, by law, make provision with respect to the composition and the territorial area of a wards committee. The manner in which the seats in a wards committee shall be filled. A member of a municipality representing a ward within the territorial area of the wards committee shall be a member of that committee. Where a wards committee consists of one ward, the member representing that ward in the municipality, or two or more wards, one of the members representing such wards in the municipality elected by the members of the wards committee shall be the chairperson of that committee. Nothing in this article shall be deemed to prevent the legislature of the state from making any provision for the constitution of committee in addition to the wards committee. Reservation of seats. Seats shall be reserved for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in every municipality, and the number of seats so reserved shall bear as nearly as may be the same proportion to the total number of seats to be filled by direct election in that municipality as the population of the scheduled caste in the municipal area of the scheduled tribes in the municipal area bears to the total population of that area, and such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a municipality. Not less than one third of the total number of seats reserved under clause 1 shall be reserved for women belonging to the scheduled castes, or as the case may be, the scheduled tribes. Not less than one third, including the number of seats reserved for women belonging to the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe, of the total number of seats to be filled by direct election in every municipality shall be reserved for women, and such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a municipality. The offices of chairperson in the municipality shall be reserved for the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and women in such manner as the legislature of a state may, by law, provide. The reservation of seats under clause 1 and 2 and the reservation of offices of chairperson other than the reservation for women under clause 4 shall cease to have effect on the expiration of the period specified in Article 3 the 4. Nothing in this part shall prevent the legislature of a state from making any provision for reservation of seats in any municipality or offices of chairperson in the municipalities in favor of backward class of citizens, duration of municipalities, etc. Every municipality, unless sooner dissolved under by law, for the time being in force, shall continue for 5 years from the date appointed for its first meeting and no longer, provided that a municipality shall be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard before its dissolution. No amendment of any law for the time being in force shall have the effect of causing dissolution of a municipality at any level, which is functioning immediately before such amendment, in the expiration of its duration specified in clause 1. An election to constitute a municipality shall be completed before the expiry of its duration specified in clause 1, before the expiration of a period of 6 months from the date of its dissolution, provided that where the remainder of the period for which the dissolved municipality would have continued is less than 6 months. It shall not be necessary to hold any election under this clause for constituting the municipality for such period. A municipality constituted upon the dissolution of a municipality before the expiration of its duration shall continue only for the remainder of the period for which the dissolved municipality would have continued under clause 1 had it not been so dissolved. Disqualification for membership. A person shall be disqualified for being chosen as and for being a member of a municipality. If he is so disqualified by or under any law for the time being, enforced for the purposes of elections to the legislature of the state concerned, provided that no person shall be disqualified on the ground that he is less than 25 years of age, if he has attained the age of 21 years, if he is so disqualified by or under any law made by the legislature of the state. If any question arises as to whether a member of a municipality has become subject to any of the disqualification mentioned in clause 1, the question shall be referred for the decision of such authority and in such manner as the legislature of a state may by law provide. Powers, authority, and responsibilities of municipalities, etc., subject to the provisions of this constitution. The legislature of a state may, by law and law, the municipalities with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as institutions of self-government, and such law may contain provisions for the devolution of powers and responsibilities upon municipalities, subject to such condition as may be specified therein with respect to the preparation of plan for economic development and social justice, the performance of function, and the implementation of schemes that may be entrusted to them, including those in relation to the matter listed in the 12th schedule. The committees with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to carry out the responsibilities conferred upon them, including those in relation to the matters listed in the 12th schedule. Power to impose taxes by and funds of the municipality. The legislature of a state may, by law, authorize a municipality to levy, collect, and appropriate such taxes, duties, tolls, and fees in accordance with such procedure and subject to such limits assigned to the municipality. Such taxes, duties, tolls, and fees levied and collected by the state government for such purposes and subject to such conditions and limits. Provide for making such grants in aid to the municipalities from the consolidated fund of the state and provide for constitution of such funds for crediting all monies received respectively by or on behalf of the municipalities and also for the withdrawal of such monies therefrom as may be specified in the law. Finance Commission. The Finance Commission constituted under Article 241 shall also review the financial position of the municipality and make recommendations to the government as to the principles which should govern the distribution between the state and the municipalities of the net proceeds of the taxes, duties, tolls, and fees leviable by the state, which may be divided between them under this part, and the allocation between the municipalities of all levels of their respective shares of such proceeds. The determination of the taxes, duties, tolls, and fees which may be assigned to or appropriated by the municipalities. The grants in aid to the municipalities from the consolidated funds of the state, the measures needed to improve the financial position of the municipality. Any other matter referred to the Finance Commission by the Governor in the interest of sound finance of the municipality. The Governor shall cause every recommendation made by the Commission under this article together with an explanatory memorandum as to the election as to the action taken thereon to be read before the legislature of the state. Audit of accounts of municipality. The legislature of a state may by law make provisions with respect to the maintenance of accounts by the municipalities and the auditing of such accounts. Elections to the municipality. The superintendent's direction and control of the preparation of electoral rolls for and the conduct of all elections to the municipality shall be vested in the State Election Commission referred to in Article 243K. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the legislature of the state may, by law, make provisions with respect to all matter relating to or in connection with elections to the municipality, application to union territories. The provisions of this part shall apply to the union territories and shall, in their application to a union territory, have effect as if the references to the governor of a state were references to the administrator of the union territory appointed under Article 239 and references to the legislature or the legislative assembly of a state were references in relation to a union territory having a legislative assembly to that legislative assembly. Provided that President may, by public notification, direct that the provisions of this part shall apply to any union territory or part thereof, subject to such exceptions and modification as he may specify in the notification, but not to apply to certain areas. Nothing in this part shall apply to the scheduled referred to in clause 1 and the tribal referred to in clause 2 of Article 244. Nothing in this part shall be construed to effect the functions and powers of the Darjeeling Gorkha Hills Council, constituted under any law for the time being, in force for the hill areas of the district of Darjeeling in the state of West Bengal. Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, Parliament may, by law, extend the provisions of this part to the scheduled areas and the tribal areas referred to in clause subject to such exception and modification as may be specified in such law, and no such law shall be deemed to be an amendment of this constitution for the purposes of this article 368. Committee for district planning. There shall be constituted in every state at the district level a district planning committee to consolidate the plans prepared by the panchayats and the municipalities in district and to prepare a draft development plan for the district as a whole. The legislature of a state may, by law, make provisions with respect to the composition of the district planning committee, the manner in which the seats in such committees shall be filled, provided that not less than four-fifths of the total number of members of the such committee shall be elected by and from amongst the elected members of the panchayat at the district level and of the municipalities in the district in proportion to the ratio between the population of the rural areas and of the urban areas in the district. The functions relating to the district planning which may be assigned to such committee, the manner in which the chairperson of such committee shall be chosen. Every district planning committee shall, in preparing the draft development plan, have regard to matters of common interest between the panchayats and the municipality, including spatial planning, sharing of water and other physical and natural resources, the integrated development of infrastructure and environmental conservation, the extent and type of available resources, whether financial or otherwise, concern such institutions and organizations as the governor may, by order, specify the chairperson of every district planning committee shall forward the development plan as recommended by such committee to the government of the state. Committee for Metropolitan Planning. There shall be constituted in every metropolitan area a metropolitan planning committee to prepare a draft development plan for the metropolitan area as a whole. The legislation of a state may, by law, make provision with respect to the composition of the metropolitan planning committee, the manner in which the seats in such committee shall be filled, provided that not less than two-thirds of the members of such committee shall be elected by and from amongst the elected members of the municipalities and chairpersons of the panchayats in the metropolitan area in proportion to the ratio between the population of the municipalities and of the panchayats in the area. The representation in such committees of the government of India and the government of the state and of such organizations and institutions as may be deemed necessary for carrying out the function assigned to such committees. The function relating to planning and coordination for the metropolitan area, which may be assigned to such committees. The manner in which the chairperson of such committees shall be chosen. Every metropolitan planning committee shall, in preparing the draft development plan, have regard to the plans prepared by the municipalities and the panchayats in the metropolitan area. Matters of common interest between the municipalities and the panchayats, including coordinated spatial planning of the area, sharing of water and other physical and natural resources, the integrated development of infrastructure and environmental conservation, the overall objectives and priorities set by the Government of India and the Government of the state, the extent and nature of investment likely to be made in the metropolitan area by agencies of the Government of India and of the Government of the state and other available resources, whether financial or otherwise. Concern such institutions and organizations as the Governor may, by order, specify. The chairperson of every metropolitan planning committee shall forward the development plan as recommended by such committee to the government of the state. Continuance of existing laws and municipalities, notwithstanding anything in this part, any provision of any law relating to municipalities in force in a state immediately before the commencement of the Constitution, 74th Amendment Act 1992, which is inconsistent with the provisions of this part, shall continue to be in force until amended or repealed by a competent legislature or other competent authority or until the expiration of 1 year from such commencement, whichever is earlier, provided that all the municipalities existing immediately before such commencement shall continue till the expiration of their duration, unless sooner dissolved by resolution passed to that effect by the Legislative Assembly of that state, or in the case of a state having a legislative council, by each house of the legislature of this state, bar to interference by courts in electoral matters, notwithstanding anything in this constitution. The validity of any law relating to the delimitation of constituencies or the allotment of seats to such constituencies made or purporting to be made under Article 243 ZA shall not be called in question in any court. No election to any municipality shall be called in question except by an election position presented to such authority and in such manner as is provided for by or under any law made by the legislature of a state. Part 10. The scheduled tribal areas, administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. The provisions of the fifth schedule shall apply to the administration and control of the scheduled areas and scheduled tribes in any state other than the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. The provisions of the sixth schedule shall apply to the administration of the tribal areas in the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Formation of an autonomous state comprising certain tribal areas in Assam and creation of local legislature or council of minister or both therefore, notwithstanding anything in this constitution. Parliament may by law form within the state of Assam an autonomous state comprising, whether wholly or in part, all or any of the tribal areas specified in Part 1 of the table appended to paragraph 20 of the 6th schedule and create therefore a body, whether elected or partly nominated and partly elected, to function as a legislation for the autonomous state or a council of ministers, or both with such constitution, powers and function in each case as may be specified in the law. Any such law as in referred to in clause 1 may be in particular specify the matters enumerated in the state list or the concurrent list with respect to which the legislature of the autonomous state shall have power to make laws for the whole or any part thereof, whether to the exclusion of the legislature of the state of Assam or otherwise. Define the matter with respect to which the executive power of the autonomous state shall extend. Provide that any tax levied by state of Assam shall be assigned to the autonomous state insofar as the proceeds thereof are attributable to the autonomous state. Provide that any reference to a state in any article of this constitution shall be construed as including a reference to the autonomous state and make such supplemental, incidental, or consequential provisions as may be deemed necessary. An amendment of any such law as aforesaid insofar as such amendment relates to any of the matters specified in the subclause or subclause B, subclause A, subclause B of clause 2 shall have no effect unless the amendment is passed in each House of Parliament by not less than two-thirds of the members present and voting. Any such law as is referred to in this article shall not be deemed to be an amendment of this Constitution for the purposes of Article 368, notwithstanding that it contains any provision which amends or has the effect of amending this Constitution. Part 11. Relations between the Union and the States. Chapter 1. Legislative relation, distribution of legislative powers, extent of laws made by Parliament and by the legislature of states. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, Parliament may make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India, and the legislature of a state may make laws for the whole or any part of the state. No law made by Parliament shall be deemed to be invalid on the ground that it would have extra territorial operation. Subject matter of laws made by Parliament and by the legislatures of states. Notwithstanding anything in clause 2 and 3, Parliament has exclusive powers to make laws with respect to any of the matters enumerated in this one in the seventh schedule in this Constitution referred to as the Union List. Notwithstanding anything in clause 3, Parliament and subject clause 1, the legislature of any state also have power to make laws with respect to any of the matters enumerated in list 3 in the seventh schedule in this Constitution referred to as the concurrent list. Subject to clause 1 and 2, the legislature of any state has exclusive power to make laws for the state or any part thereof with respect to any of the matters enumerated in list 2 in the seventh schedule in this Constitution referred to as the state list. Parliament has power to make laws with respect to any matter for any part of the territory of India not included in state, notwithstanding that such matter is a matter enumerated in the state list. Power of Parliament to provide for the establishment of certain additional powers, notwithstanding anything in this chapter. Parliament may be Parliament may by law provide for the establishment of any additional courts for the better administration of laws made by Parliament or by any existing laws and with respect to a matter enumerated in the Union List. Regulatory powers of legislation. Parliament has exclusive power to make any law with respect to any matter not enumerated in the concurrent list or state list. Such powers shall include the power of making any law, imposing a tax not mentioned in either of those lists, power of Parliament to legislative with respect to a matter in a state, in the state list in the national interest, notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provisions of this chapter. If the Council of States has declared by resolution supported by not less than two-thirds of the members present and voting that it is necessary or expedient in the national interest that Parliament should make laws with respect to any matter enumerated in the state list specified in the resolution, it shall be lawful for Parliament to make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India with respect to that matter while the resolution remained in force. A resolution passed under clause 1 shall remain in force for such period not exceeding 1 year as may be specified therein, provided that if and so often as a resolution approving the continuance in force of any such resolution is passed in the manner provided in clause 1, such resolution shall continue in force for a further period of 1 year from the date on which under this clause it would otherwise have ceased to be in force. A law made by Parliament, which Parliament would not, but for the passing of a resolution under clause 1, have been competent to make shall, to the extent of the incompetency, cease to have effect on the expiration of a period of 6 months after the resolution had ceased to be in force, except as respect things done or omitted to be done before the expiration of the said period. Power of Parliament to legislate with respect to any matter in the state list if a proclamation of emergency is in operation. Notwithstanding anything in this chapter, Parliament shall, while a proclamation of emergency is in operation, have power to make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India with respect to any of the matters enumerated in the state list. A law made by Parliament which Parliament would not but for the issue of a proclamation of emergency have been competent to make shall to the extent of the incompetency, cease to have effect on the expiration of a period of 6 months after the proclamation had ceased to operate, except as respects things done or omitted to be done before the expiration of the said period. Inconsistency between laws made by Parliament under Article 249 and 250 and laws made by the legislatures of states. Nothing in Article 249 and 250 shall restrict the power of the legislature of a state to make any law which under this constitution it has power to make. But if any provision of a law made by the legislature of a state is repugnant to any provision of a law made by Parliament, which Parliament has under either of the said articles power to make, the law made by Parliament, whether passed before or after the law made by the legislature of the state, shall prevail. And the law made by the legislature of the state shall, to the extent of the repugnancy, but so long only as the law made by Parliament continues to have effect in inoperative power of Parliament to legislate for two or more states by consent and adoption of such legislation by any other state. If it appears to the legislatures of two or more states to be desirable that any of the matters with respect to which Parliament has no power to make laws for the states except as provided in Article 249 and 50 should be regulated in such states by Parliament by law, and if resolutions to the effect are passed by the law of the houses of the legislatures of those states, it shall be lawful for Parliament to pass an act for regulating that matter accordingly, and any act so passed shall apply to such states and to any other state by which it is adopted afterwards by resolution passed in that behalf by the House or by where there are two houses by each of the houses of the legislature of that state. Any act so passed by Parliament may be amended or repealed by an act of Parliament passed or adopted in like manner, but shall not, as respects any state to which it applies, be amended or repealed by an act of the legislature of the state, legislation for giving effect to international agreements. Notwithstanding anything in the foregoing provisions of this chapter, Parliament has power to make any law for the whole or of any part of the territory of India or implementing any treaty, agreement or convention with any other country or countries or any decision made at any international conference, association or other body. Inconsistency between laws made by Parliament and laws made by the legislatures of states. If any provision of a law made by legislature of a state is repugnant to any provision of a law made by Parliament, which Parliament is competent to enact, or to any provision of an existing law with respect to one of the matters enumerated in concurrent list, then subject to the provisions of clause 2, the law made by Parliament, whether passed before or after the law made by the legislature of such state, or as the case may be, the existing law shall prevail, and the law made by the legislature of the state shall, to the extent of the repugnancy, be void. Where a law made by the legislature of a state with respect to one of the matters enumerated in the concurrent list contains any provision repugnant to the provision of an earlier law made by Parliament or an existing law with respect to that matter, then the law also made by legislation of such state shall, if it has been reserved for the consideration of the President and has received his assent, prevail in this state, provided that nothing in this clause shall prevent Parliament from enacting at any time any law with respect to the same matter, including a law adding to, amending, varying, or repealing the law as so made by the legislature of the state. Requirements as to recommendations and previous sanctions to be regarded as matters of procedure only. No act of Parliament or the legislature of state, and no provision in any such act shall be valid by reason only that some recommendations or previous sanction required by this constitution was not given. If assent to that act was given, where the recommendation required was that of the governor, either by the governor or by the president, where the recommendation required was that of the Raj Pramukh, either by the Raj Pramukh or by the president, where the recommendations or previous sanctions required was that of the president by the president. Chapter 2 Administrative Relation General Obligation of States and the Union. The executive power of every state shall be so exercised as to ensure compliance with the laws made by Parliament and any existing laws which apply in that state, and the executive power of the Union shall extend to the giving of such directions to a state as may appear to the Government of India to be necessary for that purpose. Control of the Union over states in certain cases. The executive power of every state shall be so exercised as not to impede or prejudice the exercise of the executive power of the Union, and the executive power of the Union shall extend to the giving of such directions to state as may appear to the Government of India to be necessary for that purpose. The executive power of the Union shall also extend to the giving of directions to a state as to the construction and maintenance of means of communication declared in the direction to be of national or military importance, provided that nothing in this clause shall be taken as restricting the power of Parliament to declare highways or waterways to be national highways or national waterways, or the power of the Union with respect to the highways or waterways so declared, or the power of the Union to construct and maintain means of communication as part of its function with respect to naval, military and air force works. The executive power of the Union shall also extend to the giving of directions to a state as to the measures to be taken for the protection of the railways within the state, wherein carrying out any direction given to a state under clause 2 as to the construction or maintenance of any means of communication, or under clause 3 as to the measures to be taken for the protection of any railways, must have been incurred in excess of those which would have been incurred in the discharge of the normal duties of the state of such direction, and not been given, there shall be paid by the Government of India to the state such sum as may be agreed, or in default of agreement as may be determined by an arbitrator appointed by the Chief Justice of India in respect of the extra cost to incurred by the state. Power of the Union. to confer powers, etc., on states in certain cases. Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, the president may, with the consent of the government of state, entrust either conditionally or unconditionally to that government or to its officers functions in relation to any matter to which the executive power of the union extends. A law made by Parliament which applies in any state may, notwithstanding that it relates to a matter with respect to which the legislature of the state has no power to make laws, confer powers and impose duties, or authorize the conferring of powers and the imposition of the duties upon the state or officers and authorities thereof, where by virtue of this article powers and duties have been conferred or imposed upon a state or officer or authorities thereof, there shall be paid by the government of India to the state such sum as may be agreed or in default of agreement as may be determined by an arbitrator appointed by the Chief Justice of India in respect of any extra cost of administration incurred by the state in connection with the exercise of those powers and duties. Power of the states to entrust functions to the union. Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, the governor of a state may, with the consent of the government of India, entrust either conditionally or unconditionally to that government or of its officers function in relation to any matter to which the executive power of the state extends. Jurisdiction of the union in relation to territories outside India. The government of India may, by agreement with the government of any territory, not being part of the territory of India, undertake any executive, legislative, or judicial function vested in the government of such territory, but every such agreement shall be subject to and governed by any law relating to the exercise of foreign jurisdiction for the time being in force. Public acts, records, judicial proceedings, full faith and credit shall be given throughout the territory of India to public acts, records and judicial proceedings of the Union and of every state, the manner in which and the condition under which the acts, records and proceedings referred to in clause 1 shall be proved and the effect thereof determined shall be as provided by law made by Parliament. Final judgments or orders delivered or passed by civil courts in any part of the territory of India shall be capable of execution anywhere within that territory according to law. Disputes relating to water, adjudication of disputes relating to water of interstate river or river valleys. Parliament may, by law, provide for the adjudication of any dispute or complaint with respect to the use, distribution, or control of the waters of or in any interstate river or river valley. Notwithstanding anything in this constitution, Parliament may by law provide that neither the Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect to in respect of any such dispute or complaint as it is referred to in clause 1. Coordination between states. Provisions with respect to an interstate council. If at any time it appears to the President that the public interest would be served by the establishment of a council charged with the duty of inquiring into and advising upon disputes which may have arisen between states, investigating and discussing subjects in which some or all of the states or the union and one or more of the states have a common interest of, making recommendations upon any such subject, and in particular recommendation for the better coordination of policy and action with respect to that subject. It shall be lawful for the President by order to establish such a council and to define the nature of the duties to be performed, to be performed by it and its organization and procedure. Part 12, Finance, Property, Contracts and Suits. Chapter 1, Finance. General interpretation. In this part, Finance Commission means a Finance Commission constituted under Article 280. Taxes not to be imposed save by authority of law. No tax shall be levied or collected except by authority of law. Consolidated funds and public accounts of India and of the states. Subject to the provisions of Article 267 and to the provisions of this chapter, with respect to the assignment of the whole or part of the net proceeds of certain taxes and duties to states, or revenues received by the Government of India, or loans raised by that government by the issue of treasury bills, loans, or ways and means, advances, and all monies received by that government in repayment of loan shall form one consolidated funds to be entitled. The Consolidated Fund of India and all revenues received by the government of state or loans raised by the government by the issue of treasury bills, loans or ways and means advances and all means or monies received by the government in repayment of loan shall form one consolidated fund to be entitled the consolidated fund of the state. All other public monies received by or on behalf of the Government of India or the Government of state shall be credited to the public account of India or the public account of the state as the case may be. No monies out of the Consolidated Fund of India or the Consolidated Fund of a state shall be appropriated except in accordance with law and for the purposes and in the manner provided in this Constitution. Contingency Fund, Parliament may by law establish a contingency fund in the nature of an imprest to be entitled. The contingency funds of India, into which shall be paid from time to time such sums as may be determined by such law, and the said fund shall be placed at the disposal of the President to enable advances to be made by him out of such fund for the purposes of meeting unforeseen expenditure pending authorization of such expenditure by Parliament by law under Article 115 or Article 116. The legislature of a state may by law establish a contingency fund in the nature of an interest to be entitled the contingency fund of the state into which shall be paid from time to time such sums as may be determined by such law, and the said fund shall be placed at the disposal of the governor of the state to enable advances to be made by him out of such fund for the purposes of meeting unforeseen expenditure pending authorization of such expenditure by the legislature of the state by law under Article 205 or Article 206. Distribution of revenues between the union and the states. Duties divided by the union but collected and appropriated by the state. Such stamp duties and such duties of excise on medicinal and toilet preparations as are mentioned in the union list shall be levied by the government of India but shall be collected. In the case where such duties are leviable within any union territory by the government of India and in other cases by the states within which such duties are respectively leviable, the proceeds in any financial year of any such duty leviable within any state shall not form part of the consolidated fund of India but shall be assigned to the state. Service tax levied by union and collected and appropriated by the union and the states. Taxes on services shall be levied by the government of India and such taxes shall be collected and appropriated by the government of India and the states in the manner provided in clause 2. The proceeds in any financial year of any such tax levied in accordance with the provisions of clause 1 shall be collected by the government of India and the states, appropriated by the government of India and the states in accordance with such principles of collection and appropriation as may be formulated by Parliament by law. Taxes levied and collected by the Union but assigned to the states. Taxes on the sale or purchase of goods and taxes on the consignment of goods shall be levied and collected by the government of India but shall be assigned and shall be deemed to have been assigned to the states on or up to the first day of April 1996 in the manner provided in clause 2. In its explanation, for the purposes of this clause, the expression taxes on the sale or purchase of goods shall mean taxes on sale or purchase of goods other than newspaper, where such sale or purchase takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. The expression taxes on the consignment of goods shall mean taxes on the consignment of goods, whether the consignment is to the person making it or to any other person, where such consignment takes place in the course of interstate or commerce. The next proceeds in any financial year of any such tax, except in so far as those proceeds represent proceeds attributable to union territories shall not form part of the consolidated fund of India, but shall be assigned to the states within which that tax is leviable in that year, and shall be distributed among those states in accordance with such principles of distribution as may be formulated by Parliament by law. Parliament may by law formulate principles for determining when a sale or purchase of or consignment of goods takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Taxes levied and distributed between the union and the states. All taxes and duties referred to in the union list, except the duties and taxes referred to in Article 268 and 269 respectively, such as on taxes and duties referred to in Article 271 and in any excess levied for specific purposes under any law made by Parliament shall be levied and collected by the Government of India and shall be distributed between the Union and the State in the manner provided in Clause 2. Such percentage as may be prescribed of the net proceeds of any such tax or duty in any financial year shall not form part of the consolidated fund of India, but shall be assigned to the states within which that tax or duty is leviable in that year, and shall be distributed among those states in such manner and from such time as may be prescribed in the manner provided in clause 3. In this article, prescribed means until a finance commission has been constituted prescribed by the President by order, and after the Finance Commission has been constituted, prescribed by the President by order, after considering the recommendations of the Finance Commission, surcharge on and surcharge on certain duties and taxes for purposes of the Union, notwithstanding anything in Article 269 and 270. Parliament may at any time increase any of the duties or taxes referred to in those articles by surcharge for purposes of the Union, and the whole proceeds of any such surcharge shall form part of the consolidated fund of India. Taxes which are levied and collected by the Union and may be distributed between the Union and the state, represented by the Constitution 18th Amendment Act 2000, grants in lieu of export duty on jute and jute products. There shall be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India in each year as grants in aid of the revenues of the states of Assam, Bihar, Odisha, and West Bengal in lieu of assignment of any share of the net proceeds in each year or export duty on jute and jute products to those states. Such sums as may be prescribed. The sums so prescribed shall continue to be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India so long as any export duty on jute or jute products continues to be levied by the Government of India or until the expiration of 10 years from the commencement of this Constitution, whichever is earlier. In this article, the expression prescribed has the same meaning as in Article 270. Prior recommendation of President required to bills affecting taxation in which states are interested. No bill or amendment of which imposes or varies any tax or duty in which states are interested or which varies the meaning of the expression agricultural income as defined for the purposes of the enactment relating to Indian income tax, or which affects the principles on which under any of the foregoing provisions of this chapter monies are or may be distributable to states or which imposes any such surcharge for the purposes of the Union as is mentioned in the foregoing provisions of this chapter shall be introduced or moved in either House or Parliament except on the recommendation of the President. In this article, the expression tax or duty in which states are interested mean a tax or duty the whole or part of the net proceeds whereof are assigned to any state or a tax or duty by reference to the net proceeds whereof sums are for the time being payable out of the Consolidated Fund of India to any state. Grants from the Union to certain states. Such sums as Parliament may, by law, provide shall be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India in each year as grants in aid of the revenues of such states as Parliament may determine to be in need of assistance, and different sums may be fixed for different states, provided that there shall be paid out of the Consolidated Fund of India as grants in aid of the revenues of a state such capital and recurring sums as may be necessary to enable that state meet the cost of such schemes of development as may be undertaken by the state with the approval of the Government of India for the purpose of promoting the welfare of the scheduled tribes in that state or raising the level of administration of the scheduled areas therein to that of the administration of the rest of the areas of that state, providing further that there shall be paid out of the Consolidated Fund of India as grants in aid of the revenues of the state of Assam sum capital and recurring equivalent to the average excess of expenditure over the revenues during the 2 years immediately preceding the commencement of this constitution in respect of the administration of the tribal area specified in Part 1 of the table appended to paragraph 20 of the 6th schedule, and the cost of such schemes of development as may be undertaken by that state with the approval of the Government of India for the purpose of raising the level of administration of the said areas to that of the administration of the rest of the areas of that state. On and from the formation of the autonomous state under Article 244A, any sums payable under Clause A of the second proviso to Clause 1 shall, if the autonomous state comprises all the tribal areas referred to therein, be paid to the autonomous state, and if the autonomous state comprises only some of those tribal areas, be apportioned between the state of Assam and the autonomous state as the present may, by order specified. They shall be paid out of the Consolidated Fund of India as grants in aid of the revenues of the autonomous state, some capital and recurring equivalent to the cost of such schemes of development as may be undertaken by the autonomous state with the approval of the Government of India for the purpose of raising the level of administration of that state to that of the administration of the rest of the state of Assam, until provision is made by Parliament. Under Clause 1, the power conferred on Parliament under that clause shall be exercisable by the President by order, and any order made by the President under this clause shall have effect subject to any provision so made by Parliament, provided that after Finance Commission has been constituted, no order shall be made under this clause by the President except after considering the recommendations of the Finance Commission. Taxes on profession, trades, callings, and employment. Notwithstanding anything in Article 246, no law of the legislature of the state relating to taxes for the benefit of the state or of a municipality, district, or local board or other local authority therein respect of profession, trades, callings, or employment shall be valid on the ground that it relates to a tax or income. The total amount payable in respect of any one person to the state or to any one municipality, district board, local board, or other local authority in the state by way of taxes on profession, trade, callings, and employments shall not exceed 2,500 rupees per annum. The power of legislature of a state to make laws as aforesaid this respect to taxes on profession, trades, callings, and employment shall not be construed as limiting in any way the power of Parliament to make laws with respect to taxes on income accruing from or arising out of profession, trades, callings, and employment, savings, any taxes, duties, cesses, or fees which immediately before the commencement of this constitution were being lawfully levied by the government of any state or by any municipality for other local authority or body for the purposes of the state, municipality, district, or other local area may. Notwithstanding that, those taxes, duties, cesses, or fees are mentioned in the union list continue to be levied and to be applied to the same purposes until provision to the contrary is made by Parliament by law. Agreement with states in Part 2, agreement with states in Part B of the first schedule with regard to certain financial matters represented by the Constitution 7th Amendment Act 1956, Section 29 and Schedule. Calculation net calculation of net proceeds, etc. In the foregoing provisions of this chapter, net proceeds means in relation to any tax or duty, the proceeds thereof reduced by the cost of collection, and for the purposes of those provisions, the net proceeds of any tax or duty, or of any part of any tax or duty, in or attributable to any area, shall be ascertained and certified by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, whose certificate shall be final, subject as aforesaid and to any other express provisions of this chapter. A law made by Parliament or in an order of President may, in any case where under this part the proceeds of any duty or tax are or may be assigned to any state, provided for the manner in which the proceeds are to be calculated, for the time from or at which, and the manner in which any payments are to be made, for the making of adjustments between one financial year and another, and for any other incidental or ancillary matters. Finance Commission, the President shall, within 2 years from the commencement of this Constitution, and thereafter at the expiration of every 5th year, or at such earlier time as the President considers necessary by order, constitute a Finance Commission which shall consist of a chairman and 4 other members to be appointed by the President. Parliament may by law determine the qualification which shall be requisite for appointment as members of the Commission and the manner in which they shall be selected. It shall be the duty of the Commission to make recommendations to the President as to the distribution between the Union and the states of the net proceeds of taxes which are to be or may be divided between them under this chapter, and the allocation between the states of the respective shares of such proceeds. The principles which should govern the grants in aid of the revenues of the states out of the Consolidated Fund of India. The measures needed to augment the Consolidated Fund of a state to implement the resources of the panchayats in the state on the basis of the recommendations made by the Finance Commission of the state. The measures needed to augment the Consolidated Fund of a state to supplement the resources of the municipalities in the state on the basis of the recommendations made by the Finance Commission of the state. Any other matter referred to the Commission by the President in the interest of the sound finance. The Commission shall determine their procedure and shall have such powers in the performance of their function as Parliament may by law confer on them. Recommendations of the Finance Commission. The President shall cause every recommendation made by the Finance Commission under the provisions of this Constitution together with an explanatory memorandum as to the function taken thereon to be laid before each House of Parliament. Miscellaneous financial provisions. Expenditure defrayable by the Union or a state out of its revenue. The Union or the Union or a state may make any grants for any public purpose. Notwithstanding that, the purpose is not one with respect to which Parliament or the legislature of the state, as the case may be, may make laws. Custody sets of the consolidated funds, contingency funds, and money credited to the public accounts. The custody of the Consolidated Fund of India and the Contingency Fund of India, the payment of monies into such funds, the withdrawal of monies therefrom, The custody of public monies other than those credited to such funds received by or on behalf of the Government of India, their payment into the public account of India, and the withdrawal of money from such account and all other matters connected with or ancillary to matters aforesaid shall be regulated by law made by Parliament, and until provision in that behalf is so made shall be regulated by rules made by the President. The custody of the consolidated fund of a state and the contingency fund of a state, the payment of monies into such funds, the withdrawal of monies therefrom, the custody of public money other than those credited to such funds received by or on behalf of the government of the state, their payment into the public account of the state and the withdrawal of monies from such account and all other matters connected with or ancillary to matters aforesaid shall be regulated by law made by the legislature of the state, and until provision in that behalf is so made shall be regulated by rules made by the governor of the state. Custody of suitors, deposits, the other monies received by public servants and courts. All monies received by or deposited with any officer employed in connection with the affairs of this union or of a state in his capacity as such, other than revenues or public monies raised or received by the government of India or the government of the state, as the case may be, or any court within the territory of India, to the credit of any case, matter, account, or person, shall be paid into the public account of India or the public account of state, as the case may be. Exemption of property of the union from state taxation. The property of the union shall, save insofar as Parliament may by law otherwise provide, be exempt from all taxes imposed by a state or by any authority within a state, notwithstanding in clause 1, shall until Parliament by law otherwise provides prevent any authority within a state levying levying any tax on any property of the union to which such property was immediately before the commencement of this constitution liable or treated as liable so long as that the tax continues to be levied in that state. Restrictions as to imposition of tax on the sale or purchase of goods. No law of state shall impose or authorize the imposition of a tax on the sale or purchase of goods where such sale or purchase take place outside the state or in the course of the import of the goods into or export of the goods out of the territory of India. Parliament may, by law, formulate principles for determining when a sale or purchase of goods takes place in any of the ways mentioned in clause 1. Any law of state shall, insofar as it imposes or authorizes the imposition of a tax on the sale or purchase of goods declared by Parliament by law to be of special importance in interstate trade or commerce, or a tax on the sale or purchase of goods, being a tax of the nature referred to in subclause 2e, subclause C, subclause B of clause 29A of Article 366, being subject to such restriction and condition in regard to the system of levy or levy rates and other incidents of the tax as Parliament may by law specify. Exemption from taxes on electricity, save in so far as Parliament may by law otherwise provide. No law of a state shall impose or authorize the imposition of a tax on the consumption or sale of electricity, whether produced by government or other person, which is consumed by the government of India or sold to the government of India for the consumption of for consumption by that government or consumed in the construction, maintenance or operation of any railway by the government of India or a railway company operating that railway or sold to that government or any such railway company for consumption in the construction, maintenance or operation in any railway and any such law imposing or authorizing the imposition of a tax on the sale of electricity shall secure that the price of electricity sold to the government of India for consumption by the government or to any such railway company as aforesaid for consumption in the construction, maintenance or operation of any railway shall be less by the amount of the tax than the price charged to other consumers of a substantial quantity of electricity. Exemption from taxation by states in respect of water or electricity in certain cases, save in so far as the President may by order otherwise provide no law of a state in force immediately before the commencement of this constitution shall impose or authorize the imposition of a tax in respect of any water or electricity stored, generated, consumed, distributed or sold by any authority established by any existing law or any law made by Parliament for regulating or developing any interstate river or river valley. In its explanation, the expression law of a state in force. In this clause shall include a law of a state passed or made before the commencement of this constitution and not previously repealed, notwithstanding that it or parts of it may not be then in operation either at all or in particular areas. The legislature of a state may by law impose or authorize the imposition of any such tax as is mentioned in clause 1, but no such law shall have any effect unless it has, after having been reserved for the consideration of the President, received his assent, and if any such law provides for the fixation of the rates and other incidents of such tax by means of rules or orders to be made under the law by any authority, the law shall provide for the previous consent of the President being obtained to the making of any such rule or order. Exemption of property and income of the state from union taxation. The property and income of the state shall be exempt from union taxation. Nothing in clause 1 shall prevent the union from imposing or authorizing the imposition of any tax to such extent, if any, as Parliament may by law provide in respect of a trade or business of any kind carried on by or on behalf of the government of a state or any operations connected therewith or any property used or occupied for purposes of such trade or business or any income accruing or arising in connection therewith. Nothing in clause 2 shall apply to any trade or business or to any class of trade or business which Parliament may by law declare to be incidental to the ordinary functions of government. Adjustment in respect of certain expenses and pension. Where under the provisions of this Constitution, the expenses of any court or commission or the pension payable to or in respect of person who has served before the commencement of this Constitution under the Crown in India or after such commencement in connection with the affairs of the Union or of a state are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India or the Consolidated Fund of a state, and if in the case of a change, in the case of a charge on the Consolidated Fund of India, the Court of Commissions of any of the separate needs of a state or the person has served wholly or in part in connection with the affairs of a state or in case of a charge on the Consolidated Fund of State, the Court or Commission solves any of the separate law deeds of the Union or another state or the person has served wholly or in part in connection with the affairs of the Union or another state, there shall be charged on and paid out of the Consolidated Fund of the state, or as the case may be, the Consolidated Fund of India or the Consolidated Fund of the other state, such contribution in respect of the expenses or pension as may be agreed or as may in default or agreement. Default of agreement be determined by an arbitrator to be appointed by the Chief Justice of India. Annual payment to certain Devaswam, annual payment of certain Devaswam funds, a sum of 46 lakhs and 50,000 rupees shall be charged on and paid out of the Consolidated Fund of the State of Kerala every year to the Travancore Devaswam Fund, and a sum of 30 lakhs and 50,000 rupees shall be charged on and paid out of the Consolidated Fund of the State of Tamil Nadu every year to be Devaswam Fund devised in that state for the maintenance of Hindu temples and shrines in the territories transferred to the state on the first day of the November 1956 from the state of Travancore, Cochin, private pursue private purse sum of rulers represented by the Constitution 26th Amendment Act 1971, Schedule 2, Chapter 2, Borrowing. Borrowing by the Government of India. The executive power of the Union extends to borrowing upon the security of the Consolidated Fund of India within such limits, if any, as may from time to time be fixed by Parliament by law, and to the giving of guarantees within such limits, if any, as may be so fixed. Borrowing by states, subject to the provisions of this article, The executive power of a state extends to borrowing within the territory of India upon the security of the consolidated fund of the state within such limits, if any, as may from time to time be fixed by the legislature of such state by law, and to the giving of guarantees within such limits, if any, as may be so fixed. The government of India may, subject to such conditions as may be laid down by or under any law made by Parliament, make loans to any state or so long as any limits fixed under Article 292 are not exceeded. Give guarantees in respect of loans raised by any state, and any sums required for the purpose of making such loan shall be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. A state may not, without the consent of the Government of India, raise any loan if there is still outstanding any part of a loan which has been made to the state by the Government of India or by its predecessor government, or in respect of which a guarantee has been given by the Government of India or by its predecessor government. A consent under clause 3 may be granted subject to such condition, if any, as the Government of India may think fit to impose. Property, Chapter 8, Chapter 3, Property, Contracts, Rights, Liabilities, Obligations and Suits. Succession to property, assets, rights, liabilities, and obligations in certain cases. As from the commencement of this Constitution, all property and assets which immediately before such commencement were vested in His Majesty for the purposes of the government of the Dominion of India, and all property and assets which immediately before such commencement were vested in His Majesty for the purpose of the government of each governor's province shall vest respectively in the Union and the corresponding state, and all rights, liabilities, and obligations of the government of the Dominion of India and of the government of each governor's province, whether arising out of any contract or otherwise, shall be the rights, liabilities, and obligations respectively of the government of India and the government of each corresponding state, subject to any adjustment made or modified by reason of the creation before the commencement of this Constitution of the Dominion of Pakistan or of the provinces of the West Bengal, East Bengal, West Bengal, and East Bengal. Succession to property, sets, rights, liabilities, and obligations in other cases, as from the commencement of this Constitution, all property and assets which immediately before such commencement were vested in any Indian state corresponding to a state specified in Part B of the first schedule shall vest in the Union to the purposes for which such property and assets were held immediately before such commencement will thereafter be purposes of the Union relating to any of the matters enumerated in the Union list, and all rights, liabilities, and obligations of the government of any Indian state corresponding to a state specified in Part B of the first schedule, whether arising out of any contract or otherwise, shall be the rights, liabilities, and obligations of the government of India. If the purposes for which such rights were acquired or liabilities or obligations were incurred before such commencement will thereafter be purposes of the Government of India relating to any of the matters enumerated in the Union list, subject to any agreement entered into is that behalf by the Government of India with the Government of that state. Subject as aforesaid, the Government of each state specified in Part B of the first schedule shall, as from the commencement of this Constitution, be the successor of the government of the corresponding Indian state as regards all property and assets and all rights, liabilities, and obligations, whether arising out of any contract or otherwise, other than those referred to in clause 1. Property accruing by a street or lapse or as bona vacancia, subject as hereinafter provided any property in the territory of India which, if this constitution had not come into operation, would have accrued to His Majesty or as the case may be, to the ruler of an Indian state by a street or lapse or as bona vacancia for warrant of a rightful owner shall, if it is property situate in a state, vest in such state, and shall in any other case vest in the Union, provided that any property which at the date when it would have to accrue to His Majesty or to the ruler of an Indian state was in the possession or under the control of the government of India or the government of a state shall, according as the purposes for which it was then used or held while purposes of the Union or of a state vest in the Union or in that state. In its explanation in this article, the expression ruler and Indian state have the same meanings as in Article 363. Things of value within territorial waters of continental self and resources of the exclusive economic zone to west in the Union, all lands, minerals, and other things of value underlying the ocean within the territorial waters or the continental shelf or the executive economic zone of India shall vest in the Union and the held and be held for the purposes of the Union. All other resources of the exclusive economic zone of India shall also vest in the Union and be held for the purposes of the Union. The limits of the territorial waters, the continental shelf, the exclusive economic zone, and other maritime zones of India shall be such as may be specified from time to time by or under any law made by Parliament. Power to carry on trade, etc. The executive power of the Union and of each state shall extend to the carrying on of any trade or business and to the execution, holding, and disposal of property and the making of contracts for any purpose, provided that the said executive power of the Union shall, insofar as such trade or businesses or such purpose is not one with respect to which Parliament may make laws, be subject in each state to legislation by the state, and the said executive power of each state shall, insofar as such trade or businesses or such purpose is not one with respect to which the state legislation may make laws, be subject to legislation by Parliament. Contracts. All contracts made in the exercise of the executive power of the Union or of a state shall be expressed to be made by the President or by the Governor of the state, as the case may be, and all such contracts and all assurances of property made in the exercise of that power shall be executed on behalf of the President or the Governor by such person and in such manner as he may direct or authorize. Neither the President nor the Governor shall be personally liable in respect of any contract or assurance made or executed for the purposes of this Constitution or for the purposes of any enactment relating to the Government of India here to force in force, nor shall any person making or executing any such contract or assurance on behalf of any of them be personally liable in respect thereof. Suits and proceedings. The Government of India may issue or be issued by the name of the Union of India, and the Government of State may issue or be issued by the name of the state and may subject to any provisions which may be made by Act of Parliament or of the legislature of such state enacted by virtue of powers conferred by this Constitution to or be issued in relation to their respective affairs in the like cases as the dominion of India and the corresponding provinces or the corresponding Indian states might have sued or been sued if this constitution had not been enacted. If at the commencement of this constitution any legal proceedings are pending to which the dominion of India is a party, the Union of India shall be deemed to be substituted for the dominion in those proceedings, and any legal proceedings are pending to which a province or an Indian state is a party the corresponding state shall be deemed to be substituted for the province or the Indian state in those proceedings. Chapter 4, Right to Property. Person not to be deprived of property save by authority of law. No person shall be deprived of his property save by authority of law. Part 13. Trade, commerce and intercourse within the territory of India. Freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse. Subject to the other provisions of this part, trade, commerce and intercourse throughout the territory of India shall be free. Power of Parliament to impose restrictions on trade, commerce and intercourse. Parliament may, by law, impose such restrictions on the freedom of trade, commerce or intercourse between one state and another or within one part of the territory of India as may be required in the public interest. Restrictions on the legislative powers of the Union and of the states with regard to trade and commerce, notwithstanding anything in Article 302, neither Parliament nor the legislature of the state shall have power to make any law giving or authorizing the giving of any preference to one state over another, or making or authorizing the making of any discrimination between the one authorizing the making of any discrimination between one state and another by virtue of any entry related to trade and commerce in any of the lists in the seventh schedule. Nothing in clause 1 shall prevent Parliament from making any law giving or authorizing the giving of any preference or making or authorizing the making of any discrimination if it is declared by such law that it is necessary to do so for the purpose of dealing with situation arising from scarcity of goods in any part of the territory of India. Restrictions on trade, commerce and intercourse among states, notwithstanding anything in Article 301 or Article 303. The legislature of a state may by law impose on goods imported from other states or the union territories any tax to which similar goods manufactured or produced in any state are subject so, however, as not to discriminate between goods to so imported and goods so manufactured or produced and impose such reasonable restriction on the freedom of trade, commerce, or intercourse with or within that state as may be required in the public interest, provided that no bill or amendment for the purposes of clause B shall be introduced or moved in the legislation of a state without the previous sanction of the party president. Saving of existing laws and laws providing for state monopolies. Nothing in Article 301, 303 shall affect the provisions of any existing law except insofar as the President may, by order, otherwise direct, and nothing in Article 301 shall affect the operation of any law made by before the commencement of the Constitution, Fourth Amendment Act 1955, insofar as it relates to or prevent Parliament or the legislature of a state from making any law relating to any such matter as it is as is referred to in some clause 2 of the clause 6 of Article 19. Power of certain states in Part B of the schedule to impose restrictions on trade and commerce, represented by the Constitution 7th Amendment Act 1956, Section 29 Schedule. Appointment of authority for carrying out the purposes of Articles 301 and 4. Parliament may by law appoint such authority as it considers appropriate for carrying out the purposes of Article 301, 302, 303, and 304, and confer on the authority to appoint it such powers and such duties as it thinks necessary. Part 14. Services under the Union and the States. Chapter 1. Services. Interpretation. In this part, unless the context otherwise requires, the expression state does not include the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The equipment and conditions of service of persons serving the Union or a state, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, acts of the appropriate legislation may regulate the recruitment and conditions of service of persons appointed to public services and cost in connection with the affairs of the Union or of any state, provided that it shall be competent for the President or such person as he may direct in the case of services and cost in connection with the affairs of the Union, and for the Governor as a state or such person as he may direct in the case of services and cost in connection with the affairs of the state, to make rules regulating the recruitment and the conditions of service of person appointed to such services and cost until provisions in that benefit in that behalf is made by or under any act of the appropriate legislation under this article, and any rules so made shall have effect subject to the provisions of any act such manner of office of person serving the Union or a state, except as expressly provided by this Constitution. Every person who is a member of a defense service or of a civil service of the Union or of an all India service or holds any post connected with defense or any civil post under the Union holds office during the pleasure of the President, and every person who is a member of a civil service of a state or holds any civil post under state holds office during the pleasure of the Governor of the state. Notwithstanding that a person holding a civil post under the Union or a state holds office during the pleasure of the President, or as the case may be of the Governor of the state, any contact under which a person not being a member of a defense service or of an all India service or of a civil service of the Union or a state is appointed under this Constitution to hold such a post may if the President or the Governor, as the case may be, deems it necessary in order to secure the services of a person having special qualification, provide for the payment to him of compensation if before the expiration of an agreed period that cost is abolished or he is, for reasons not connected with any misconduct on his part, required to vacate the post, dismissal, removal or reduction in rank of person employed in civil capacities under the Union of a state. No person who is a member of a civil service of the Union or an all India service or a civil service of a state or holds a civil post under the Union or a state shall be dismissed or removed by an autonomy by an authority subordinate to that by which he was appointed. No such person of aforesaid shall be dismissed or removed or reduced in rank except after an inquiry in which he has been informed of the charges against him and given a reasonable opportunity of being heard in respect of those charges, provided that where it is to cause after such inquiry to impose upon him any such penalty may be imposed on the basis of the evidence adduced during such inquiry, and it shall not be necessary to give such person any opportunity of making representation on the penalty proposed, provided further that this clause shall now apply where a person is dismissed or removed from where the person is dismissed or removed or reduced in rank on the ground of conduct which has led to his conviction on a criminal charge, or where the authority empowered to dismiss or remove a person or to reduce him in rank is satisfied that for some reason to be recorded by that authority in writing, it is not reasonably practicable to hold such inquiry, or where the president or the governor, as the case may be, is satisfied that in the interest of the security of the state, it is not expedient to hold such inquiry. If in respect of any such person as aforesaid, the question arises whether it is reasonably practicable to hold such inquiry as is referred to in clause 2, the decision thereon of the authority empowered to dismiss or remove such person or to reduce him in rank shall be final. All India services, notwithstanding anything in chapter 6 or part 6 or part 11, if the Council of States has declared by resolution supported by not less than two-thirds of the members present and voting that it is necessary or expedient in the national interest so to do, Parliament may by law provide for the creation of one or more All India services, including an All India judicial services common to the Union and the states and subject to the other provisions of this chapter, regulate the recruitment and the conditions of service of persons appointed to any such service. The service known at the commencement of this constitution as the Indian Administrative Service and the Indian Police Service shall be deemed to be services created by Parliament under this article. The All India Judicial Service referred to in clause 1 shall not include any cost inferior to that of a district judge as defined in Article 236. The law providing for the creation of the All India Judicial Service aforesaid may contain such provisions for the amendment of Section 6 of Part 6 as may be necessary for giving effect to the provisions of that law, and no such law shall be deemed to be an amendment of this Constitution for the purpose of the Article 368, power of Parliament to vary or revoke conditions of service of officers of certain services. I thank all my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students, scholars, teachers, trainers, professor, professional, officer, official, listener, learner. I thank all respected doctors and directors. I thank all honorable minister manager. I thank all honorable advocates, notaries, and district advisors. I thank the most honorable president, Modi. Thank you. Nice to see. Good evening to all of you.